What's going on, folks, and welcome back to the party. Been running a bit behind on the Pantheon coverage lately, so I've got a quick one I'd like to blaze through that will be featuring the alpha trackers for the months of December and January. As always, we're going to be skipping past anything that hasn't received any updates or has already been completed, and focus on the items that have actually made progress in the duration since we last covered them. It starts off, as always, with the classes and combat section. Putting both the December and January tracker nodes side by side, we can see that for both months they have continued to work on the ongoing balance passes and ability kit adjustments for classes that are currently available. Something I've noticed that we haven't had much public information on is the progress on the implementation of the Warrior. Right now, as you can see from public footage showcasing the pre-alpha, we only have the Dire Lord as the available tank for Pantheon, and that might feel kind of limiting because it doesn't have access to equipping shields, which can make mitigating damage that much harder. Plus, it'd be nice to have some variety for the tank classes like we kinda have at the moment for healers with Shaman and Cleric, and the available DPS classes people can choose from in the pre-alpha. To add on to that, it might even be really cool to see the Bard or a second support class that can be added to fairly round up all of the available choices we have right now. But following this, we have the network overhaul changes. For December, they began working on seamless loading between zones. This will also include the completion of cross-zone communication, group persistence, and custom zone borders. And for January, the support for seamless zoning has been completed. While the work on cross-zone communication and other subjects are still in progress, in addition to this, some key post-vinyl functionality is still pending. The NPC pathfinding across zones, local weather profiles, and dynamic entity spawning systems, which include pets, mobs, and event-driven spawns. The next system that receives an update is the ability loadout system, which starts off as only 2 due in December. It makes its way to in progress when we get to January. In this alpha tracker, support for multiple saved ability loadouts and separate ability bars has been implemented, alongside support for managing multiple loadouts being in development. This is going to be very interesting because if you don't know, Pantheon is going to utilize a system known as the limited action set for its abilities and skills, also known as weapon techniques. We talk about the system a lot, but this essentially means that your character will be limited to 2 total action bars but a vast array of skills and abilities to choose from. My question is how this change will end up impacting that, but I suspect this will be something that you can only change out of combat, and would allow you to, like it says, set up multiple ability loadouts / weapon technique pairings so that you can mix and match them depending on the situation. Something else I also wonder is if you'll be able to get around the ability limitations of the Keeper system with this change. I think we'll have to see it in action to know for sure, but that's something that definitely crossed my mind while reading this. The gathering and crafting systems got the largest amount of changes in these trackers. Starting off with December, they tell us that work has begun to convert gathering nodes into game entities, which allows them to be hooked up into their combat system. I think a lot of this we actually dived into in the previous What's Next for Pantheon video, but just in case, I'll leave this up for a second to show you some of the other changes they made. Skipping down past the swimming, climbing improvements, dispositions, and traits all seem to show the same notes as November, and we have the art section which ended up receiving the bulk of the updates for both of these months. Under the zone changes, we have the new terrain textures in development for the snowy regions of Avendir's Pass, which is just to the southwest of Thronefast. Below this, they also mention the finalization of points of interest development for this region to support the upcoming testing objects, finished the creation of 3 new flora types for the following Eastern Kings Reach biomes, the first pass of a new culling system that is not bound to scene-based parameters, and on the January side we have several updates to art, including more changes to Avendir's Pass, completion of all ground cover flora for Thronefast and the surrounding areas, and implemented new assets to form the entrance for Avalia. For most of these January changes specifically, we also see some visual demonstrations from their newsletter, and this is something we'll be diving into separately when we talk more about their new tool system breakdown. But as for the player models, we can jumble those changes together and run through them all in one. For December, we have a completed modeling, texturing, and rigging patch note for the Dark Mer male and female, alongside ongoing work on hair system / styles for both humans and Dark Mer that also continues into the January patch notes as ongoing. NPC models still remain unchanged for these 2 months, but general 3D assets does see some progress. For December, they've completed various armor sets utilizing revised armor fitting guidelines with new character models, and in January they continued the work on armor sets that fall within these parameters of using the revised armor fitting and being compatible with the new models they're working on. With animations as the last change topic of the trackers, in December they completed the skinning and rig for the Dark Mer female, completed additional animations and polish for slashing auto attacks, and completed several animations for the swimming, which includes swimming forward, backwards, being idle, swim burst, which is sprinting while swimming, near death swim, which would be absolutely terrifying, death float, and underwater looting. followed by January that has additional animations and polish for shield combat states and blocking. Hopefully that means more progress towards the warrior. They initiated animation revisions for two-handed blades and death, and full completion of the swimming animations we went over just a second ago. And that, folks, is all the most recent alpha tracker updates spanning these past 2 months, but there is still a lot of detail to be covered from these 2 newsletters, and I can't wait to dive into them. January in particular contains a community spotlight that I was lucky enough to be featured in, and if you ever have a moment to learn how I became such a weird dude, I highly recommend giving it a look. In the meantime, hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and as always, have a wonderful night or day, folks. Farewell.